All right, welcome everyone to the session. We just had a couple technical difficulties, and let me just say this is a quick notification that we are in the process of developing what we call our one button studio, and so that particular facility is being developed, and we're actually testing it once again. All right. So we just got some new equipment, and of course, we are trying to use it in this, to christen it, as it were. All right, so let's get straight into it. I'm your facilitator for today's session, but I'm not alone. All right, so that takes us a step further. So let's go on. And today's objectives. We have now one is crossed through because you see we kind of did that last week, and we did touch on some of the others. And let me just highlight one time that in addition to me, I have with me representatives from the Alma Jordan Library, as well as the Bursary and the Office of Online Learning. All right. Now, before we go any further, I want us to use this opportunity to get a quick recap. Can you see my PowerPoint presentation? Let me just ask.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So good. Right. So just making sure that all is well here. All right. So before we go any further, I really want to take an opportunity to recap what we did last week in last week's session, and then we'll sort of navigate our way from there. All right. Now, remember this general sequence. We had a whole jigsaw puzzle activity on it. All right. These are the general elements of any sort of curriculum design. All right. Whether it be a course or a program, these are the standard features or tenets or components of that design. Now, I did highlight, distinguish between the two, a course proposal versus a program proposal. Remember, we said that a program proposal is an overarching course of study or program of study, whereas the course the program comprises multiple courses. All right, but the course, however, is one outline, one proposal, or one, it focuses just on a course, whereas the program focuses on series of connected courses. All right. Nevertheless, the process is the same. All right. Whether it's for a program or or a course. All right. The review process is the same in the sense that it goes through the same reviewing entities. It goes through the same processes for the most part. And we did explore that in last week's session to some extent. In this session this afternoon, we're going to look at it even further. So we're going to start where we ended last week with learning outcomes, then go into assessments, and then, of course, we hand over to representatives from the library, from the Office of Online Learning, and the Bursary. All right, so we're happy to have you here. We're happy that you've joined us to continue this series, and yeah, so we're gonna have a good time. So I wanted to create a recap gaming activity, but I know you have some homework, so we'll get to that in just a bit. So I didn't want to sort of take too much time with regard to that. So just to recap very quickly, we did look at the review process, all right, and we had this is the entire process here. It may seem confusing, but it's just the entire process. So remember, those red arrows refer to sort of like an internal faculty. It's internal to your faculty. So your faculty board, or your curriculum subcommittee and so on will review the material and then or the proposal, and then it goes to the CTL, the library, the Bursary, even the OOL where necessary. And then once you get approval from those entities, it goes further to academic board, ACWAC, BUS, etc., and of course, then it goes into it's created in Banner for students to register, and then of course, from Banner, it goes into My Learning, right? So, and we did have Ms. Dickinson last week. I'm not sure if she's here today, but we did have her last week, and she explained from the Banner administration side of things. All right. So, like I said, it goes through your internal faculty committee. Then it goes to the CETL or the library or the OL. Now, let me just say this, to make the process even more efficient, it's recommended that you do it to those entities, CETL, library, OL, etc., all at the same time, or the bursary as well, all at the same time. So you don't have to wait until you get approval from the library then to submit it to CETL, or you don't have to wait to get approval from the OL then to send it to other entities. You can send them all at the same time, and then you do it sort of, I don't say simultaneously, but you do the amendments accordingly. All right. So once you get the approvals from the different entities, then it goes to academic board in the form, well, ACWAC. If it's a graduate program or course, then it goes to the Office of Graduate Studies and Research. And eventually, once it's approved there, it goes straight into Banner. All right. With regard to course design, course or program design elements, these are some of the elements that we highlighted. All right, we must have prerequisites. So what do students need before they complete this course in order to be enrolled in this course or program? What is the credit weighting? The level, is it level 1, 2, 3 undergrad or a postgrad? Yeah, so these are things that you need to consider. Then, of course, the duration, if it's a semester, what semester it's going to be running or offered, the mode of delivery. And we do have with us a representative from the Office of Online Learning who will elaborate on a host of concerns that fall under online offerings. All right, and then teaching methods and assessments as well. So in addition to that, we have equipment and the technological infrastructure that may be necessary, and other logistics, and of course, library resources, which is important. All right, and we do have, just so you know, we have the library representative here today. All right, who would shed some light on that. So in last week's session, we identified these. We sort of broke them up into 3 different segments. We had the administrative segment or administrative information. Then we had the pedagogical information, which we stopped, I think, around learning outcomes and so on, and just before we went into assessments. And then we have the financial aspects of it. All right. When we looked at the administrative information, of course, we had a host of other things there in terms of the prerequisites, getting the course, the programs created in Banner, and that sort of thing. And these are some of the questions that we suggested. Who's offering the program? So what's the department, the faculty, the entity, where's this program or course housed? Yeah, who's offering it? Because that's important, because of course it snowballs even into the certification. All right, when the program is completed. Is it a core course? Is it an elective? Is it a co-curricular course? All right, or co-curricular credits? That sort of thing. The projected enrollment. Is it for full-time or part-time students? Those sorts of things. Then, of course, we have the all of this in terms of translating that information into the template. We have the different fields where this must be inserted. Now, in last week's session, we did get this started. So we did identify the prerequisites. We did identify in some cases where what level the course will be offered, year 1, year 2, year 3, or postgraduate, undergrad or postgrad. All right. And we did go through all of these things. And I trust that during between last week and this week, you probably made some amendments as you pondered on it a little more. Then we went into the pedagogical aspect of things. And well, we know what the pedagogical side spoke about in terms of the teaching and learning methods, the instructional activities, those sorts of things. And translating that into the form or the template, we got to this point where we created our learning outcomes. We, of course, prior to that, we discussed the description, what should go in the description, what are good rationales versus okay rationales, all right, and the course content, all right. So, and this is just a quick recap. Now, this brought us to learning objectives or learning outcomes. And the learning objectives, of course, in a nutshell, is really what you want, what knowledge, skills, and attitudes you want students to acquire or develop when they have completed your course or program. All right. So, and we did identify the 3 domains, the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective. And we also highlighted the taxonomy and the, the whole hierarchy of things and verbs that you can use. Remember, we had a formula. All right, Leticia? I know you like that, the formula. Handle plus verb plus time plus context equals an exemplary learning outcome. Another model that we did mention last week is the ABCD approach, all right, which works as well. So, but I like to make things, even though mathematics was not my strongest suit, probably still isn't, but we did put a formula that would work for you, all right? And we showed you in the template what this would look like. All right, let us see put in the emoji. Thank you so much for that. All right. And so when we translate this into the template, we looked at some exemplary learning outcomes and just putting in that information in there. All right. So we see what this looks like. And for your homework, you had to create 3 to 4 learning outcomes. All right. For your particular course proposal and share it with the class. So we're at this point now, and I want to ask any of you you could state it in the chat or you can use your microphone to share at least 1 or 2 learning outcomes with the class, please. All right, don't all rush at once. If you're typing, I know it might take some time, but by all means, you can use your mic or you can use the chat. Okay, so Lynette, okay, by the end of the course, you'll be able to apply knowledge of the Caribbean history of colonialism to analysis of a contemporary social problem in the Caribbean nation. Okay. Let's dissect it a bit. I like that to apply, so it's measurable. But then to apply knowledge, what you probably might want to, you could probably add a little more specificity to it. When you say apply knowledge, what do you mean? Is it that you want them to apply principles, or do you want them to apply
information? Anything? It would be information about the Caribbean's history of colonialism.
Okay. So
yeah, because I was toying between the 2 words. Should I use knowledge or should I use information about?
I would say probably information is a little better, a little more concrete.
Right.
But knowledge can be very abstract. Yes. And you might even go a step further and say, I would probably say tenets, because that would speak to more than just general information, probably more specific, poignant areas or principles or whatnot. So I think tenets might be a better word.
Okay.
So apply tenets of the Caribbean's history of colonialism to an analysis of contemporary social, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Not a problem at all. And you only need to use the handle once. So by the end of this course, you will be able to, or by the end of this course, students will be able to, and then you list the learning outcomes right after. All right. So by the end of this session, students will be able to critique the portrayal of Haiti's capital city in the 2 news. That's a good one. I like that. So you notice you have the critique. They will be able to do what? Critique, right? So that's an observable form of behavior. Good. And then you have the details there, or the context. Haiti's capital city in the 2 news reports. So very good. Carla, I see you have, okay, by the end of this course, students will be able to critically assess teachers' current assessment practices in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, good. I think that's pretty good. Perhaps you can change just to avoid having assess and assessment in, back to back. I think you may want to, it's just something to consider. If you want to put evaluate, so So by the end of this course, students will be able to evaluate teachers' current assessment practices, etc., etc., etc. All right. The second one, Carla, collaborate with others to design a subject, discipline, etc. I think that one you probably might need to tweak just a little bit. So I would probably suggest collaborate with others or collaborate in the designing of etc. etc. You get what I'm saying? Because right there you have, by the end of the session, students will be able to collaborate and then you have to design. So it would clash, it wouldn't be as measurable. You follow? Yeah. So keep that in mind. Paulson, by the end of this course, students will be able to use readable formulas in determining appropriateness of, okay, nice, I like that one. Design appropriate activities for, right, good, I like that. Devise tools for monitoring content area. Okay, very good. I like those. Well, Paulson, I know you would know these things too. So, but I like those. Very exemplary and measurable learning outcomes. Notice everyone, guys, that notice these learning outcomes are measurable because you have right after the handle, by the end of this course, students will be able to design, devise, use. So these are observable forms of behavior that make this learning outcome more measurable. All right. Andrea, you have upon successful completion of this course, students will be able to predict the behavior of lights as it interacts with biological. Oh, nice. Very good. I like these. Good job. Good job. All right. Any others or anyone wants to read out any or call out any? And by the way, I have joining us in today's session. So I didn't introduce the special guest yet because that's a surprise. But we also have part of the CTL team, Mr. Randy Duku. All right. He's waving, but he's off camera, but okay. And then we have Mr. Mark Garcia. All right. So in addition to using the new equipment and really getting things up and running with this new approach and delivery, they are here to provide the support. They're providing support as well to me and to all of us. All right. Okay, as we continue, Alana, on successful completion of this course, students will be able to differentiate among natural numbers. And okay, good, nice, very good. All right, hashtag Cuttle Alana, okay. All right, Stephen, you have by the end of this course, students will be able to empathize with the plights of migrants force. Okay, all right. I like that one, but it could tweak a little bit. So I would avoid, and this is generally for everybody, anytime you have to put to and a verb in the learning outcome, then or I have to put two of those things, then that's a red flag. So you have by the end of this course to be able to empathize, sorry. And then you have later on in the same learning outcome to undergo. So you want to switch to undergo a little bit. All right. So you might probably say, by the end of this thing, the students will be able to empathize with the plights of migrants undergoing a dangerous sea crossing, something of that sort. Chris, by the end of this course, students will be able to recognize the most common patterns in the distributed systems, okay, and understand the benefits, right? So Chris, I like where you're going here, very good, but I think those are two learning outcomes that you probably place there. Because we have by the end of this, students will be able to recognize, all right? And then you have later on to understand. Now, understand is a little abstract as well, so you probably want to put something more observable. So identify the benefits and challenges of each. So something along those lines, all right? Yes, Stephen, yes. So those are good suggestions. Chris, again, recognize the most common patterns used in distributed systems. Right, and describe the benefits of it. So that should put, or you could put, if you want to make it into one learning outcome, you could probably phrase it like this. Recognize the common patterns used in distributed systems with a description of the benefits and challenges of each, something along those lines. So at least the learning outcome has a little more, you have more detailed conditions, all right? So instead of recognize the most common patterns and describe the benefits, those are two learning outcomes. But if you want to keep it as one, you could put recognize the most common patterns used in distributed systems with a description of the benefits and challenges. So that's something you might want to consider. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. I think I like that you took the homework very seriously, and it shows. All right, and I hope this was really, really helpful. And for those of you who didn't share your learning outcomes, you can always send them to us. Let's Alana's clapping. Yes, you can always send them to us for a little tip here and there, or this recording will be made available to you as a quick crash course. We also have a video on our YouTube channel. I think it was 5 tips on creating exemplary learning outcomes. So you can check our YouTube channel or the TTT, Tuesday Teaching Tips, which I think that one was sent a couple of weeks ago. All right, probably about 2 weeks, 2-3 weeks. And it was connected to another webinar that we had. All right, so we just to kind of wrap up the learning outcomes segment, just some tips for you. You want to be learner-centric. Remember, the learning outcomes is more so about what students will be able to do, not what you will be able to cover. Yes, it guides you, but it's more specifically what students will be able to do or accomplish or develop by the end of the course. All right, and I think Mr. Garcia is going to put the link in the channel to our YouTube channel, so you could look. You should be able to get the videos that we post there. So feel free to subscribe, and yes, so every time we post a new video, you'll get it there. If you don't see the one with the learning outcomes, you could probably check your email, because I think those were sent to your email accounts through TTT. All right. So you also want to be measurable or specific, like I said, and it must have an observable form of behavior. That's always, so it's almost like, how do you know that you know? Or how do you know that students know? So if I tell you, Chris, I know a whole lot about programming, then you might probably tell me, well, Justin, true, how you know, how? And then I would have to demonstrate that form of behavior. How I'll have to probably do a programming exercise or build a game, for example. All right. So you must, that's how you know that students know. Of course, you want to be able to be sure to recap, so at least you know you could track the learning that is taking place, or the progression of the lesson or the course. And that's, of course, in the teaching aspect of it. But in your course proposal or program proposal, you definitely want to make sure that it's learner-centric and that it's measurable. All right. Teaching methods and contact hours. I'm going to ask Mr. Garcia to share the link, and you don't have to look at this video now. It's in the resources document, but you can definitely, or Mr. Dupu, to share a link, and if not, we could always share it subsequently. But right, it's the teaching methods video. So it's just a simple video. You don't have to look at it now for the sake of time, but it's definitely something that would shed some light as you could do this independently. So I don't want to take up too much of your time with that. But you definitely want to also, Mr. Garcia, you could share the notional hours, calculating notional hours. And so those two resources will definitely help you in narrowing down or fine-tuning or ensuring that your contact hours and the credit hours and so on, the duration of the course satisfies the requirements or the standards identified or established by the overarching entities, whether it's BUS or the Office of Graduate Studies and Research. Now, these links that we are sending here, especially the calculating notional hours, will definitely help you in ensuring that something is not overly weighted or misconstrued or inaccurate. Earlier today, actually, I had a consultation with a faculty member, and it was about those same things. I think it was a particular program that had a course in it that was beyond the credit weighting for that particular semester. So we had to fine tune something. So this document, the calculating notional hours, is a guide. It doesn't mean that you just copy and paste straight from there and put it into your proposal, but it's a guide, all right, in helping you calculate the notional hours. All right. Now, your assessments, which is what we're getting to now, is basically, it's fairly simple. Now, you wanted to make sure that when you have your assessments, all right, when you have your assessments, that it connects with your learning outcomes. Yeah. So make sure that you are, what I recommend is look at your learning outcomes. We just looked at some learning outcomes. Consider how will you know that that learning outcome is satisfied or accomplished. So for example, like I said with Chris, if I said I know about programming, then you would want me to demonstrate that I know, or show you that I know. What would be the activity you might, or the assessment? You might give me an assessment where I have to build a game, right? Which would take some sort of programming or some, application of IT principles and so on. So that is an example there. So you want to make sure where your learning outcomes are aligned with your assessments, or your assessments feedback to your learning outcomes. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, great. So when it comes to teaching methods and contact hours, just a quick, this is also on the notional hours document. This is a quick example of what it looks like. What I don't want to say the ideal, but what a model that you can follow, all right, and appropriate for your particular course. So for example, lectures, 12 weeks of lectures, contact hours, maybe 12 plus hours. And of course, you break it up accordingly. You would know how long your lectures are, if it's 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and the credit weighting associated with that. Notice at the bottom of the total, it's 12 weeks, and the notional hours, in this case, it's 108 for a total credit weighting of 3. All right. In the undergraduate credits, you see we have lecture 12 duration, 12 hours, or 12 weeks, sorry. Then notional hours 36, because you do the math. And then, of course, the credit for that is 1 credit. All right. Now, I'm not sure if our guest online from the Office of Online Learning may explain or mention I know we did talk about it last week to some extent, but may mention the contact hours and so on in an online learning environment. But I know we did discuss it last week. And of course, if you want to share any further insight in that regard, by all means, you can. And we could always have this conversation, this discussion ongoing. All right. So this is another example. So of a 3-credit course. So we see the total number of credits here, 3 credits, contact hours, and duration. So this is just another example. And this is also what I was referring to and what we mentioned last week with a blended course. So we see an example of an online 3-credit course, an example and an example of a blended 3-credit course. All right. So this is just something to guide you. Because I know we did mention it last week in our session in part 1, where the conversation, the discussion even went into the realm of what comprises synchronous versus asynchronous, and how do we, I don't want to say measure, but how do we weigh that? Yeah. So yes, so you could ask those questions also to one of our guest facilitators today. So very excited about that, right? And we'll answer as best as we can. So hopefully that helps. In terms of course assessments, like I said, you always want to make sure your assessments align with your learning outcomes. So for example, if I move a little higher up and say, Stephen, so you want them to be able to recognize the most common patterns used in distributed, sorry, Chris, Stephen, I was referring to you. By the end of this course, students will be able to empathize with the plights of migrants undergoing a dangerous sea crossing, right? Let's say that's your learning outcome. How will you know that your learners have accomplished or met that learning outcome?
Well, I could ask them to put them, well, I'll give them an exercise, maybe a case study or something. Ask them how they would feel at certain points. You know, if the boat is filling up with water, how they would feel.
Right.
If they had to write maybe if they had time to write some emergency note,
right?
because the boat was really going down, and they wanted to, I don't know, maybe the best thing to do, I was saying to put a note in a bottle, but anyway.
What?
The best thing I would say, well, is just to ask them how they would feel.
Right. Okay. But maybe you might want them to, you want something more, I'm assuming you want something more measurable in the sense, or more definitive. So is there an assessment you had for that particular, like an assessment activity you had for that particular learning outcome? And that's okay if you didn't for now, because you're still processing it.
Yeah.
So I could probably suggest, go ahead.
Off the bat, I mean, having, you know, at the end of the case study, they have, the case study ends with them having survived this dangerous crossing. And they had to write a journal on their experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good example there. So the way you mentioned that, to write a journal, that would be an assessment activity for that learning outcome. Another one may be to have a debate, a class debate, all right, or a presentation on online, if it's an online course or blended, a presentation on what it is like, you know, to what it may have been like, what the experience was like for those persons who had to undergo that experience. Yeah, so those are ways that, those are assessment activities that would let you know that the learning outcome has been accomplished. Right. You follow?
Sure.
Definitely. Chris, if I were to ask you, recognize the most common patterns used in distribution systems with a description of the benefits and challenges of each. How would you measure that learning outcome? What assessment activity you would give to students that would help let you know that that learning outcome has been accomplished?
Right. So one thing that will come to mind, so they have to recognize, I'd probably give them some papers to review. Right. So I'll select some research papers around the topic.
Right.
They would have to evaluate it, critique it, because in order to do that, you have to identify the particular patterns and so on. And then apply to a context. So probably a Caribbean context or something like that.
Excellent. Good. So good job. I'm not sure if we have, I think we have one more, differentiate among natural numbers into, okay, I think that was Alana. Good. Alana, what learning activity or assessment activity or item would you give to students to confirm that they've accomplished that learning outcome?
So what I'm thinking is give them a set of numbers and then ask them to be able to identify which ones are the complex, which one are the reals and rationals.
Right.
So, or like you could also give them to list, to give examples. So they have to come up with, you know, like list 5 complex numbers. They have to come up with 5 numbers for themselves. Excellent.
Excellent. You clearly thought this through, but I like that. Very good. But you see where it's going, guys. So you have your, and this is what this graphic that I have on the slide here shows. You have your assessment item, but it's not randomly, okay, I want them to do a quiz, or I want them to do an essay. I want them to, no, it has to be aligned or connected to one or more learning outcomes, right? So now it doesn't mean that for each learning outcome, you have to have an individual assignment. One assessment could cover multiple learning outcomes. You don't want to make it too reductive or too redundant where you have a learning outcome for each, where you have an assessment for each learning outcome, or you have an assessment that covers all the learning outcomes, all the assessments cover all the learning outcomes, because then that is, you don't need all the assessments if that's the case, all right? Or you don't need so many assessments if that's the case. Yeah, does that make sense? Any questions? We're all good? All right. And of course the weighting. Now it must be whatever the learning out, whatever depending on the nature of the assessment, you want to weight it appropriately. All right. Make sure that it's not too menially weighted. So I would avoid assessments where you have 1% or 0.5% for something, then it's not meaningful to students. All right, I see Ravindra, you have your hand up. Go right ahead, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Justin. I came
Hi.
in late. I had an exam up to 2 o'clock.
Sure.
Actually, I wanted to know if you could go back to number 7, because that one has given me a little issue as I'm doing the course outlines for our new certificate program. Number 7.
I'm going to ask Mr. Garcia to help me there. So you want me to navigate back to the
one with the credit hours and the credit hours, yeah.
Right. Is it this one? No?
We're going back to one more slide.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
This. Okay, yeah, this one. All right. So it says contact and credit hours, and okay. For other, is it okay? Let's say you have 3 quizzes that takes up almost an entire 1 hour period. Will you put like quizzes there and put if you have it in 3 different weeks, like week 4, 8, and 12, and you'll put 3 weeks and then like 3 contact hours. But for the end where there is credit hours, are we putting up, if it's a 3 credit course, does the hours in that last column have to add up to 36? Or is it we just put in 3 credits at the end for total and nothing in the top 3 columns? Yeah, okay.
I think I understand I hope I understand what you're saying, what you're asking. If you put for other, now other could mean you don't necessarily have to give too much information, because it could vary in terms of what comprises other, right? The activities and so on. Okay. If you put, so I think your question is in the row with the total, if you're saying if you just put the total number of credit contact hours and so on, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I understand, like for a 3 credit course, the total weeks will be 12, which is not a summation of the numbers above. And the contact hours is usually more than the credit hours, like in our case where we have labs.
I would recommend that you insert the information in the previous rows, because you don't want that it gets to CTL and we can't track, okay, where is this going, right? Or when it gets, if it's a proposal for a graduate program or an undergraduate program, when it gets to ACPAC or Office of Grad Studies, then there's an anomaly there, and then it has to go all the way back, and it takes longer than it should. So I would recommend that you insert, even if it's inaccurate, we could help you with that. All right. But if you use the guide that we provide, and if you came in to get that guide, the notional on hours, but if you use that guide, at least you get it as close as possible, and we could kind of tweak to when you submit it. All right.
Okay, well, talking about that, this table that I'm looking at doesn't have anything about notional hours. So I'm using the template that I got from you all. So mine's, I saw this too, but I thought that notional hours is not a column in the template. So I don't have anything about notional hours.
Right. No. This is it's 2 different documents. So what I'm showing you here is a document that will guide you in that. So when you look at it, you look at the calculations basically, and it's supposed to be a guide. So that would help you insert the relevant information in the proposal document. Yeah. Does that help?
No, not really, because what I'm saying is that table before doesn't have a column with notional hours in it. So I don't have that column. I have the other columns, and I still need some clarity on the last column here.
All right.
Yeah.
So the contact hours that you have in this table, you could use it synonymously as notional hours. So how much time or how many hours are you meeting with students, whether it's through a lecture, whether it's through labs, tutorials, etc. So, and you could even break it down like
developing kids as a teacher over 22 years.
What's that? I think the video might be playing, I'm not too sure.
Started my career as an engineer.
Somebody video might show it. Let me check.
and 22 years ago when I started teaching high school.
Quite different. All right, so let me go back to that slide again. So yeah, go back. And all right, so what was I saying? The contact hours. So that really deals with whenever you have to meet with students, usually through a synchronous activity, maybe an asynchronous activity, but whatever activities that you do with students that you get to meet with your students, those construct or comprise what we call the notional hours. So if you notice in the next slide, it has notional hours, which, and in brackets, it includes contact hours. So that's the translation there. I guess maybe it's a difference in the terms, but it's no, you could use them synonymously for now. All right. So duration or number of weeks, which is in most cases 12, contact hours / notional hours, and you could put that there, and then the credits. Does that help?
A bit
muddy.
To me, the notional hours includes the contact hours, but contact hours is something separate. Like if I'm looking at this, the contact hours is 12, 24, probably let's call it 48. I will have to say the contact hours was 48 and the notional hours is 108. So I'm taking that as two different things. Well, the notional does include the contact, but the contact, you know, the contact is technically less than the notional hours in mine. I don't know if anybody else has opinion. Yeah. Huh? Sorry?
You said something? Sorry?
Oh, no, I said that my understanding is that the contact hours will always be less than the notional hours. They are not one and the same in my understanding.
In your understanding, yeah. So I think maybe the confusion is probably what the handout is saying versus the conceptualization of it and then the template as well. But so I was just trying to break it down or make it as simple as possible, that instead of seeing it as separate for now, at least in this document, it's saying it's inclusive, it encompasses that. So if you want, what you can do is probably in your proposal, you could put it as close as possible. And then we can we normally have consultations that go with the proposal process. So, but it's just to provide you with a guide, you know, so you have something, because sometimes people just leave it blank and then we're like, well, what's going on here? All right.
Okay, I think that's what I had it blank. Okay, thanks very much for adjusting. Okay then, thank you.
All right, okay. So moving very quickly, so we have an idea in terms of the alignment. Oh, I think my presentation. Okay, good. So we have an idea of the alignment, all right? And this is an example here where we have the learning outcome. So we see learning outcome B, identify innovation opportunities, and E, deliver effective innovation pitch proposals, etc., etc. Look at the following slide, and we see here the assessments that align with that. So for example, we have the assignment 1, which is 10%, where they have to say what makes something an innovation or characteristics that make a person an innovator or an entrepreneur. In assignment 2, develop an innovative business idea and conduct a preliminary market test. So these are you see the link between the two. All right, if I were to go back and show you again the learning outcomes, you see the alignment. So you see they're related. That's kind of what I wanted to emphasize. Oh, Linton, you have a question. Can an assessment item be done over different lectures or topics? Example, joining 2 different objectives from 2 lectures, say toward during. Okay, Linton, could you explain? Could you elaborate or clarify, please? I don't know if you have your mic. If not, you could type it in the chat. But if it is what I think you're asking in terms of the assessment item that could encompass different modules or different lectures and that sort of thing, yes, you can do that. Right, so say taught during week 2 and week 5. So if you have an assessment that covers what was done during week 2 and week 5, yes, you can do that. You can do it. It just depends on the nature of it. It might be something that is ongoing or continuous. In other words, what we call continuous assessment. That is perfectly fine. If it's a quiz or something of that sort, then you could probably have that quiz done shortly after week 5, just because you don't want to, the retention and so on, you don't want to miss that. All right, that window of opportunity. All right, I hope, does that answer your question, Linton? All right, I guess you can type it in the chat, and if not, we'll come back to it. Course assessments. This is just a quick map of what it looks like for the same course. So we have the assessment type, we have the topics there, and what the weighting of each. All right. So for example, what is the presentation? It's a 5-minute presentation. Notice the weighting of the 5-minute presentation, which is just 10%, which is a group presentation. It's not high stakes. So, the weighting is fairly decent. Then we have the second group presentation, which is 2 5-minute presentations. So notice it increases, the weighting or percentage of it increases. And then we have the final exam, which is 30%. And it's a 7-day time limit to submit a report. So it's, I guess, an online, perhaps an open book sort of thing. All right. But what I want to bring attention to is the weighting of it. Now, the weighting is appropriate given the length and the description, of course, and the description is provided in the section just before. So you always want to be mindful that you're not giving students major tasks that are menially weighted. All right, it must have some sort of balance between the two, the weighting and the requirements or tasks. All right. So the calendar, and before we go to our first guest presenter, the calendar is something that you want to pay attention to as well. It's mandatory, especially for undergraduate studies, and it's becoming mandatory for graduate studies. The course calendar is sort of a map of somewhat of a map, a loose, vague map of what the structure of the course. So it outlines the weeks, the topics or modules, the required reading, which is where the library resources may come in, the required resources, not just readings, but resources. All right. As well as the learning activities, what is online, what might be face-to-face, what might be synchronous, what might be asynchronous, as well as the assessments, which may take different forms as well, which is where the representative from the Office of Online Learning may shed some light as well. So one of the things we look at from a curriculum stance in terms of the CTL, one of the things we look at with regard to the calendar would be, one, how do we know that this course is, what makes this course blended or online? Because there are no online elements, right? Or the scheduling of the assessments. If assessments are scheduled on consecutive weeks, then you run the risk of students not being able to keep up or submitting substandard, poor quality work, or not allowing for reflection on deep level learning. So we always recommend that you avoid scheduling assessments on consecutive weeks. All right, and I didn't go intentionally, I didn't go into the online components per se, because I know our guest presenter will elaborate on those. I see we have in the chat, if you already have weight, do you need to repeat below for each? Yes, you need to include it for each assessment. You mean in terms of the matrix? Yes, because the matrix is a quick view of all that you've described, because remember, everything before that comes in different sections. So this is a quick view, and it's the university's template. So all right, and that template, the reason we have that matrix is to show alignment. All right, and that was to answer Ravindra's question. Carla, does the university have guidelines or regulations about the weighting of coursework and exams? Good question. Somewhat, yes. Now, for final exams, anything less than 50% is not done by the exam section. All right, because what they found is that students do not take it seriously. Some students may struggle because sometimes you could pass the course. If a final exam is worth 40% or 45%, then a student could technically pass the course without doing the final exam. So I think their guide is that once it's less than 45, less than 50%, it should be an in-course exam. All right. Also, we tend to recommend from the CTEL that you try to avoid highly weighted or high stakes assessments. So anything that is like 80% and above or 75%, those we try to advise to stay away from those things because they do not redound well on the students. And what happens is they may, if it's a quiz, for example, they may just remember, just regurgitate, but retention is poor. So long-term retention is poor. All right. Added to that, of course, is the stress, the anxiety, and so on that students will also have to deal with. So if you have in-course assessments, definitely break them up, like what I showed you earlier with the 20%, the 10%, the 30%, etc. All right. How do you determine if it's a must-pass assessment? All right, good. A compulsory assessment. So you could easily set that in your proposal that students need to pass both the coursework and the final exam in order to pass the course. That is a regulation that the university supports as well, or has. All right, hopefully that answers your question, Carla.
Yes and no. So could you say if you have more than one component of your assessment, can you say that all must be must pass, or could you say that but this one which is weighted the heaviest should be a must pass?
Okay, so you want specificity in terms of if you have different coursework, each coursework must be passed, correct?
Yes, if you could state it like that, or you could give the option of the heaviest one, the heaviest weighted one must be a pass.
Yes, just what you said, the latter one there, where the heaviest one or the most highly weighted one is students have to pass that. You could do that as well. We've seen proposals with that and they've been approved. So there's no reason to say that you can't. Of course, it must be substantive, not overwhelming, but you may, for example, require that students pass, I wouldn't say all of the assessments, because remember, they are learning at the same time. So I would stay away from that part of it. You don't want to say that they have to pass all of the assessments, but if you say something along the lines of they have to pass the coursework and final exam, that could work. If you want to say that they have to pass one particular assessment, a coursework assessment, and a final exam, that's perfectly fine as well. Because sometimes in order to be certified, or we've seen courses with that, they have to pass a certain coursework, all right, or specific activities. So yes, you can do that. All right, Chris, is there a limit to the number of assessments? Or can we have like 10 loop? Okay, good. If it's a 100% coursework, you can have multiple in-course assessments that could go. I personally would recommend, and not personally, but this is even with ACWAC or Academic Board, I would recommend that you keep it to if it's coursework and you have a couple small or low stakes assessments, you could go as high as 6, but generally I suggest 4 to 6 assessments is standard. All right. If it's a normal course, 4 should be sufficient. If it's coursework, because you have the extra weeks where you could submit where students could submit during the exam season, you could go on to 5, no more than 6. All right. Not a problem. All right. So at this point, I want to hand over to some of our guest presenters. I know we're a little behind time, but I wanted to entertain some of the questions along the way. So we do have with us 3 presenters, co-facilitators, who will share some insight in completing not just a course proposal, but a program proposal. First up, we have Dr. Laura Pilgrim. Dr. Pilgrim is the acting director of the Office of Online Learning. All right, so anything that you hear about, for example, MOOCs or the global learning and so on, Dr. Pilgrim is the person to go to. All right, I'm not putting no pressure, right, Dr. Pilgrim? But I'll hand over to Dr. Pilgrim now, who will shed some light on what her office looks for when reviewing proposals. Dr. Pilgrim? I think your mic is off. Okay,
thank you so much. And I'm just going to start screen sharing if
yes,
you like.
You can just boot mine off. All
right, no problem. No problem. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Hi, we can hear you. I can hear you. I don't know if everyone else can.
I hope so. And you can let me know when you can see my screen and let me know if you're seeing the slide or the notes.
We're seeing the notes.
And now you're seeing this.
Just the slides. Perfect.
All right, lovely, good. So we're all ready now. So colleagues, thank you for having me today. And as Justin has already introduced me, I'm just going to talk a little bit about preparing your course proposal or your program proposal and what kinds of things my office will look for if you're coming to us. So first, to start this process off, let's just take a quick look at the policy landscape at UE in terms of your online and blended proposals. And that the main policy that you would be looking at is the quality assurance for online and blended courses and programs at the UE. And you can find this at your settle or at QAU on your campus. There are a couple other policies that you may want to reference, but that one is most important. There's the UE global policy if you're going to be asking Open Campus to deliver your course. If you have multiple faculty from multiple campuses teaching in your program, then you might want to be looking at the multi-campus teaching and learning policy. And you may also want to look at the intellectual property policy. So that's basically the policy landscape that we have here. And we've been talking a lot about quality in different ways in terms of what you're doing in your courses and how you're designing your programs. Just to let you know that the UE subscribes to the OLC, the Online Learning Consortium's quality scorecard in terms of online and blended learning. They have a variety of different rubrics for all of the areas that you see mentioned here. And again, you can access this through QAU. So let's get started. If you designed your program or your course and you're sending it to me, then I'm going to be looking at these 5 areas in terms of the checklist that's found in our quality assurance policy for online and blended learning. So I'm going to be looking at the program structure, tech support, faculty preparedness, student support, and assessment and evaluation. And if you have questions during, just please put them in the chat or just put up your hand so I can see. So one of the things that I see commonly is that even though this is a checklist, I see people just check the boxes on the checklist and they don't provide any evidence that they have achieved what the checklist is asking for. So this is a key point. When you're sending out that checklist, make sure that you've provided evidence of each of these areas. That evidence could be just referring to the page in the program proposal or the course proposal that describes this particular area, or you can cut and paste it right there, but you need to provide some evidence. So I'm going to take a step back from what Justin is doing and just help you to think about your program or course structure when you are thinking about moving it to online or blended delivery. And the first question I would ask you is, what do you want to accomplish? Why are you thinking about using blended or using online delivery? And you should have a good rationale for that. Part of your answer may be who your target customer is. Maybe this person needs more flexibility in their course delivery, so that's why you're choosing to do it online or blended. And what problem are you solving for them? Why are they going to want to do it online or blended rather than coming to the campus face-to-face? People have their own preferences, so you need to know who your target market is and how are you solving this particular problem for them. And what is your solution? That's going to come in terms of not only your delivery, but the content that you're providing. Is it going to help them be able to achieve their dream of getting this particular job or becoming more educated in a particular area? You're thinking about that when you're writing your course. And finally, what is your unique value proposition? Why is it that this particular individual is going to want to take this particular course or program with your faculty? What is it that is so attractive that they're going to want to take it with you? So all of these things you're thinking about as you build that course or program proposal long before you get it to me. Because choosing to have your course online or blended is not only an academic decision, but it's a financial decision because it has implications for the resources that you're going to need and what is going to happen as you move forward. One area that we have been talking about quite a lot today is the curriculum. So I'm back to my question, why do you want to deliver this particular curriculum in a blended and online format? And when I'm looking at your course or your program proposal, I should be able to see very clearly, either using that chart or in the course outlines in the proposal, which weeks are going to be asynchronous and which weeks are going to be synchronous if you're doing a blended or fully online. That should be really clear, and it should be clear to me why you've chosen to do this part of the course in this particular way, why you've chosen to do another part, for example, online. You should also be able to show clearly how your delivery is going to be different than your face-to-face, which would show me that you understand how to use whether it's asynchronous or synchronous components in your course. And the big question is, what will students do if this is an online or blended course? Are they just going to be listening to you lecture? Are they going to be doing particular activities by themselves or in groups? What are those activities? Can they be done easily online? How are they learning to collaborate with other students in an online or blended course? So what students will be doing, those learning activities are critical. Now, I can't give you a whole list of learning activities for every course. That is something that you would probably talk to your settle about, or you can come and have a discussion with us, but that's going to be on a course-by-course basis. So you need to be thinking about what the students will be doing, not just how you're lecturing in your online or blended course. The next area that I would look at is, what evidence are you showing in terms of how you're providing support? So we could start with technical support. Your IT team is probably going to be the ones that are supporting your learning management system. They may be also helping you to do the video with Zoom, or however you're going to do it. But you need to have some evidence of somebody who's going to provide that technical support. If your students can't log into their course on a particular day, who is it that they need to talk to? Who does the faculty need to talk to? You need to make sure that you know that for your online or blended course. In terms of student support, students will need an orientation to your course or program if you're going to be doing an online or blended. So they need to know that long before they start your course so that they can be prepared in whatever way they need to prepare. You'll need to make sure that the communication between you and the students, not only during the course, but before the course is clear. So you'll have this information on your website, or you'll send them emails. You'll have a demonstrated way you're going to do advising in an online or blended course, and you'll have your usual tutorial support. One of the things that we ask is, how many students are you going to have to one tutor? Because if you have a large class and it's an online course, you need to think about that so that the students will be supported. Because what we're looking for here is an excellent online or blended experience for our students so that they learn well and they can be successful. In the same way, we are looking for you to show us evidence of faculty support. In the quality assurance policy, it's outlined that anyone who's teaching in an online course must have been trained to do that. And you can get that training at the Cuddle. You can get that training in the online course committee, where they provide free online facilitation courses and other courses to help you. You probably will also want to seek the services of somebody like Justin or an instructional designer to really go into your course in some detail and make sure that the activities that you are choosing and designing for your online or blended course are going to work well for your students and help them to achieve the learning outcomes that you want. In addition, we would love to see that you're using multimedia, whether that's videos you create or other forms of media in your course. And some of you would certainly need some support in doing that, because we all have different skills and there are people among us who are just excellent with video and those kinds of things. So you want to be providing support at a technical level, support for students and faculty support, all in the aim of having an excellent online or blended course. And you're providing evidence in the checklist for how you're going to do each one of these things. All right. And we've been talking in the last few minutes quite a lot about assessment and evaluation. So we could go into detail, but that's going to kind of be different per course. So my general comments about that is that when I'm looking at your course outline or your program outline, I want to see that the assessment that you have chosen for your online or blended course is appropriate for the learning outcomes that you have and for the delivery mode. So if the course is fully online and you have decided to have a face-to-face exam, then you need to make sure that before the student even starts that program, because maybe they're in Jamaica and you are offering this course or program online from Trinidad, you want to have a face-to-face exam in Trinidad, you need to let your students know that at the beginning of the course or program that they're going to have to come to Trinidad to write this exam, or that you're going to set up some kind of alternate method for them to take that face-to-face exam. So we would want to see that in your course or program proposal. And as you would know, especially if you've taken Cuddle, you want to make sure that your assessments are valid and reliable. Oftentimes we'd love to see if they were authentic, and obviously they have to minimize cheating. So there are a multiplicity of different types of assessment that you can use in your online or blended course. That will vary on a course by course basis, but they need to be appropriate to your learning outcomes and to the delivery mode. We will be having a conference quite shortly on digital pedagogies for sustainable development. And this is going to go into some details about how you can build a really excellent online course. So if you're interested, you can contact me and we can talk about that a little later. And I just wanted to give you a very brief overview of the kinds of things that I look for when I look at your course or program proposal. So I'm opening up the floor to questions. Please feel free. You can raise your hand, put it in the chat. However you'd like.
All right, thank you so much for that, Dr. Pilgrim. I see we have some questions in the chat.
I'm gonna stop sharing. And I'll just let you have my email and contact information in case you need that. And then please go ahead with the questions from the chat.
I see Ravindra was asking about the, can you hear me? Sorry, anybody?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Ravindra was asking about the differences between online program and a fully online program.
Ravindra, to my understanding, there's no difference between those two. If it's an online program, that means that all of the courses in that program are online. If it's a blended program, then some of the courses are online, some of the courses are face-to-face, some of the courses can be blended with a mix of both online and face-to-face. So if the program is online, then all of the courses are online. I hope that answers your question. No problem, you are welcome.
I see you mentioned the checklist. I'm just gonna ask Mr. Dupuy to paste a link in for the checklist into the chat. Because I think you might as well have it, everyone.
Yeah.
As a point of reference.
The checklist is part of the quality assurance for blended and online courses policy. So it's at the end of that policy that you'd find the checklist. And as its name, it literally looks like a checklist, but we are expecting you to provide evidence and not just to tick the boxes, because that happens a lot.
Yes.
And then I have to go back and ask you persons to give me some evidence that you are doing this.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Chris?
One of the things I ask, and I guess you could chime in here as well, is that I ask faculty to post to include as an appendage any sort of correspondence they got, let's say from the IT department on technical preparedness or technical support. So for example, from the IT department, that they are providing the technical infrastructure and so on for that course or program. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, that is perfectly fine, and I see that quite a lot. That's a good thing. I see Chris has a question. Sync or async in the weeks column? Yes, you definitely could do that. It should be clear in the course which weeks, if it's a blended course, which weeks are going to be taught face-to-face, for example, or which weeks are going to be taught synchronously and which weeks are going to be taught asynchronously. That should be clear, because that's something that the student is going to know. And oftentimes I'm looking at this partially through the lens of a student, what is going to help them to be able to be successful in this course. And if I know that weeks 1 to 3 are face-to-face and then weeks 6 to 9 are going to be asynchronous online, I can take the time to prepare myself to make sure that I am going to be successful in that course. So yes, thank you, Mark, for posting that. I'd like just to ask this question. Can I have a show of hands for anyone who has prepared a course proposal or a program proposal for a completely online course? I don't see any hands so far. So, okay, I see one. Thank you, Leticia. Okay, looks like one. All right, thank you. And my second question, oh, you're doing, all right, thank you, Chris. My second question is, how many of you are or have written course proposals or program proposals for asynchronous online courses? For asynchronous online courses, course proposals or program proposals for asynchronous online. Okay, so that's no one. All right, so that's pretty consistent. Almost all of the program proposals or course proposals I see are blended and not fully online.
I think someone was just asking about MOOCs in reference to your question just now.
So MOOCs would be considered fully online. Yes, Raquel. That would count. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if we have another question.
That is a really good question. Might be a little difficult given that we're all on different campuses and we can't all access the same things. But I would be happy to have a conversation with you about that, or to point you to some resources that might be able to help you with that, Chris. So feel free to reach out to me and I'll do what I can to help you with that. Lynette, that is a very good question. A very good question, Lynette. So the simple yes, no answer is that anybody can run it. The part that you need to pay attention to is, what are your resources to do that? And is the campus set up to do that? Most of the campuses are not really set up to do that, but it's not that it's impossible. I hope that's answered your question. We have some campuses running fully online programs. Most of them are synchronous. Open Campus is the one who runs the vast majority of asynchronous online programs. All right, great, Chris, thanks.
Just one thing, Dr. Pilgrim, we had part of in last week's session, we had a very nice discussion on, in addition to synchronous and asynchronous, we had a discussion on, how to call it, the high flex approach when we were talking about modes of delivery. So I don't know if you want to share some insight. We did address it and so on, but any additional insight or anything that you think is pertinent to that discussion?
Okay, so UWI is in the process of revamping our quality assurance for online and blended courses and program policy. And one of the things that we did in that is address this so that we have a uniform framework, because we are using the term blended, we're using the term hybrid, we're using the term high flex. These are overlapping, but we're not always using them exactly in the same way. So we are choosing to use the term blended to encompass hybrid and high flex. Now, high flex is a very particular type of blended, because there are things that you need to do if you are saying that you have a high flex course. And let's say I'm a student in your high flex course. That means in week 1, I can decide to attend your course face-to-face. And in week 2, I can decide to attend your course online asynchronously. And in week 3, I can decide to attend your course online synchronously. In the high flex, the student always has a choice of which mode in pretty much every single class, which is not generally what we're doing here. So we just need to be careful about the terms that we're using to describe what we're doing. But all of these are under the term blended because they all involve some online and some face-to-face. So I hope that has that answered what you were asking me, Justin?
Definitely, definitely. One of the things that we mentioned last week too, in that same discussion, was if that you're going in the direction of the high flex approach, that you need quite a team to do so.
Yes, high flex is not the easiest mode to deliver because of what I just said, that the student can choose to attend in pretty much any mode on any given day. That takes an incredible amount of work on the part of the facilitator or the instructor to make sure that all of the modes are ready to go at a moment's notice.
And to ensure that engagement is not compromised.
Correct. Yeah. Which is not the easiest thing to do across all 3 modes on any given day. So definitely. Any other questions or comments? Lynette, that's a good question. But the university's focus is not necessarily on high flex. When you're going global, you're looking mostly at asynchronous online courses, because as you would be well aware, you could have a student who is on a 12-hour time difference from where we are in our region. And therefore that may be quite difficult to do synchronous all the time. If it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon here and it's 2 o'clock in the morning in some other location. So generally they're looking at asynchronous online because that takes away that issue. You can still have short live lectures, but they would be recorded and kept in the course for people to access at their own time. I hope that's answered your question, Lynette. I'm not sure if it has. All right. All right, if there are no other questions, then I will thank you, ladies and gents, for your time and for inviting me. And please feel free to reach out to me at the Office of Online Learning, and we'll put the address in the chat for our website so that you can reach us. And I'm turning it back over to you, Justin. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Pilgrim. Definitely, I hope it was beneficial, I think, and provided some insight to online teaching and learning. And hopefully it was beneficial to our colleagues here. By all means, if there are any questions that you may have for the Office of Online Learning, you can certainly contact Dr. Pilgrim. I don't know, Dr. Pilgrim, would you like to paste your email address in the chat so persons can contact you there?
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you for agreeing to do this with us. All right. Up next we have. Okay, great. Up next we have Miss Mariella Pilgrim, and Miss Mariella Pilgrim is the head of the user services at the Alma Jordan Library. And Ms. Pilgrim will share some insight on what the library looks for with regard to your proposals. Ms. Pilgrim?
Thank you, Justin. I would just need to share my screen. I'm not able to do that right now. I think you have to make me co-host or something like that.
Okay. You should be able to share it now.
Great. Great. So as indicated before, I'm just here to share a bit with you about what we do, what's important to us, and by extension to you when it comes to your course or program proposal. The most important thing for us right now, we concentrate on the resources, both print and electronic. What are the resources required for your students to be successful in whichever course or program they are undertaking, as well as to support you while you are teaching this particular course. So that's our focus, just that. So in order to focus on that, of course, you have to provide us the information. And what we require, really, the person responsible for each course must evaluate the collection. You must tell us, do you think that the collection is adequate? And by simply completing, and I'll give you a few screenshots of the library information form, which we normally call US 38-1, but you all wouldn't know that. But the library information form that is available on our website, or you just contact your liaison librarian and say, can I get a copy of this form? Why? This form actually provides us with some information that we can use, the information that we can use to start assessing and evaluating how much funds will be required to meet the needs of purchasing and or acquiring the resources. So bits of information like, how many students do you expect? Is this a new course? Is it just an extension of a particular subject right now that you're already offering? Is an extension of another course? What are you offering? You need to supply us with a book list. You need to let us know well. In the first year, we expect 5 students. In the second year, 20 students. That will help us to plan further for what happens the following years when the program continues or the course continues. You also need to provide us with a book list or the required text. What will the students be required to use? The whole plan is by the time this course is being offered, we have that material available for them. So the US 38-1 form, the book list, and of course, the proposal for each course. Because you will be doing your assessment, but we will also have to do our assessment of our collection. So now I'll give you a quick look. This is what the US 38-1 form requires. Basic information about the faculty, the course, if it's new, the subject area, if it's a postgrad, if it's undergrad, as I said, number of students, and your assessment of our collection. So it's very important for you to also be aware of what resources we have. what does the library have, whether it's print or electronic, and then you evaluate. It doesn't make sense telling us it's excellent when it's not. Some people think that, oh, let's just check the boxes and it'll get through faster. It won't. Be honest. If the collection is limited or inadequate, that will require a little work from you, because if the collection is inadequate, we would expect you to identify some resources that you think, you know, apart from these essential texts, these will help to build the subject area. You are the subject experts, so that's why we request this type of information. And most important also is this issue, is it self-financing or not? And this is a bugbear for us these days, because as I mentioned earlier, everybody is sending through course proposals now, self-financing, and factoring in the purchase of resources into their budgets. But at present, we don't see that those funds coming to the library. But we'll talk about that. So when you do your particular, you complete that US 38-1, your assessment of the library collection and the information required, you send us the book list, you send us the course proposal, we then take that information and start doing our own checks. We start by looking at what you have listed and also assessing our own collection. And that information is sent to you for you to use. You can use that information after to assist. We also look to find more up-to-date material. So you may provide us with a list and you may put down 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and then we check there's the 8th edition out. If you haven't done those checks before, of course, we will pick up those things. So it is important for you to also look at our assessment. And a quick look at some of the things that we do. You know, we would pull out based on the subject. You know, how many books we have on the topic, how many journals we have on the topic. All this is valuable for you as well. So we don't just send this form back to you just to put aside to say, oh, well, okay, the library has finished, has done what we have asked. This is for you to get an idea of what is out there. It's very important for you to know, well, what your students have access to and whether you will need to, you know, supplement, add, as the case may be. So we do really do an analysis of the collection. We identify databases that are valuable to you, your students. We also look outside. So what's published in the area? So we start looking at, okay, what's available in the field? And when you look at a figure like, okay, 14,439 items are available in the field versus how much we have in our collection, it'll give you a good idea of where we stand. Also, how recent are our publications? You know, we might say, okay, we have about 500 books on the subject, but have these been published in the last 5 years or so? When are they old? So we provide you with this information so you also can, it's at this stage you can adjust your reading list, you can make adjustments, you can make recommendations. All right, so following on that, we of course look at, you know, your book list. You've sent a reading list, 22 items. Okay, the library only has 6 of those in its collection. So we give you a costing of the items, whether they're available in print or electronic. And because of our current environment, we go for the electronic. I mean, COVID taught us that as well. The electronic books that we have came in very handy for our students. And we do have a collection of over 70,000 electronic books. So this is important for you to know as well, because you can also go through our books and see, you may find the material there for your students to use, your reading list, your book list. So very important for us. I can't stress it, you know, that book list is important. Your course outline gives us your information, your course proposal gives us information with respect to subjects. So we know what's being taught. We know the subjects that are being covered, so it helps us to also go through our resources. And perhaps in some instances, and then again, we do an estimate of the future cost. So what it could possibly cost the library next year. if this continues, or the following year, we may have a few newer editions. So we will have to buy a few books, but not necessarily everything. And what's important for you to also look at is the remarks column, right? Sorry, I'll cut this short, because the budgets, you know, we all know that budgets have been cut. So we are unable to acquire journals at this time. So you will see a little notes coming up. Some people may recommend journals, but we will put a note saying, well, we are not providing journals at this time. But you can check, you know, we have, or in this case, a list was sent to the faculty member so that they can see what other journals we have in the subject area. So this, you know, we provide that particular service to help you so that you can pass this information on to your users. You can amend your book list, your reading list to reflect new editions, perhaps changes like this. There are cases sometimes where we find persons have on their reading list publications that are no longer in print, not available for us to purchase. So we may send you a note to that effect. So it is up to you to then check our collection, see what's available, or work with your liaison librarian to see what books are available to replace some of those outdated materials, out of print materials. And why I stress outdated? Because as a member of ACWA, I've sat on the board on occasions where questions were asked like, why does this course proposal have these dated books? You know, and you need to be able to answer that question. You know, is it that there's nothing current in the field? So we always try to point that out to you all, that these books are a bit dated. You know, are you sure this is what you want to use? We have others in the collection. So problems, what problems do we encounter really? And what can you do to speed up the process? Many times we just get a course proposal. We just get a course proposal, that's it. We do not get the library form that you are supposed to complete. We do not get a list of publications separately so that we can work with this upfront and quite easily. So we have to send and ask for it, and then it takes some time. It's back and forth, that sort of thing. So time is wasting, right? And as I indicated before, some of the things may be out of print or not available for purchase. So when we send that information, we want you to respond in a timely manner. Complete proper referencing. So we would get a list of books, you know, sometimes the title is a bit wrong, the author's name is odd. We have to try to figure out, is this a book or isn't the book? It's recommended that you follow the style in the department because it's expected that your students would have to follow that style as well. So the recommended style for the department, please, or the faculty, please follow that. Check for links carefully before adding to your book list, because we have found things with broken links, we can't access them, and we can't do anything with that. Right? It's not that we have to purchase the item, but this is just making it, we will point it out to you so that you can correct it or make whatever changes necessary. And as I indicated before, just avoid just checking boxes. We still have to do the check, so it's not going to change anything. If the collection is inadequate, say it's inadequate, all right? But we expect that you would check our resources, both print and electronic, before you make a statement like that, all right? So time. Avoid short processing time. This is really critical. We have gotten requests for program proposals, which of course that means several courses. And, you know, we get emails and persons say to us, could I get this in 2 days, please? I have to take it to a meeting, a board meeting. Not possible, right? Not possible, because like you all, you know, this is not the only responsibility we have, and it cannot be done in a couple of days. So be mindful of that, right? If it's one course, you know, we will try to, you know, push it through, but when you have a program, no, right? So tips for the faculty. Talk to your liaison librarian. You know, I'm going to offer this, I'm thinking about this new course. Can I meet with you? You know, can you give me some advice on available resources? You know, every liaison librarian is a member of the curriculum review committee. So if you see that they're not on the committee or they're not there, ask a question because they're supposed to be there. You can get assistance with up-to-date publication, open access resources. We all feeling the pinch, the budget pinch, and we do have several open access resources available on our website, on our databases A to Z list. That helps you to keep the costs down. And that's what most people want to do, keep the costs down. Because when we do send that library impact statement, and people see, recently we had, and somebody saw like $80,000. They were like, what? The library trying to make money, but that's not it. The costs of books, especially electronic books, you know, they're very expensive. Because if you have a class of 10 students, we can't buy a single user. We have to buy a 3-user or monthly user. So these things add up. Once again, I can't stress again, provide a book list, you know, materials, a reading list, and try to, if it's a program, give us at least a 3 weeks lead time. If it's a program, you know, we need that time to go through every single course on the proposal. But when it comes to amending existing courses, and this is what we have been finding coming to us, because people are moving to blended, people are moving to online, people are changing their assessments, you know. So basically, if it's a new subjects, major changes, expansion of existing subjects, then you need to send it through the library, because there will be a change in your resources, most probably, right? There will be a change. So you will need new, different text, perhaps additional text. We will need to know that and do that assessment. But if it is changes to delivery, right? So, and some of these things, or assessment, these may not require any major work by the library. So if the course was pre-approved and you are now going to ask for change in mode of delivery, perhaps to blended, then, and unless there are changes to the book list or the reading list, then all we will simply do is respond with an impact statement saying that the course was pre-approved and there's no impact on the library. So that's a quick process. But as long as you have any major changes, now you bear in mind, if you're going to change into online, this could also have an impact. Who is your target audience? Are these persons overseas? Will they be coming to the library at all? Are they only within Trinidad and Tobago? If not, then this may impact on the format of our resources. If we only had print resources at the time, we will now have to acquire electronic resources. So you have to let us know this type of information. And this, you can meet with your liaison librarian, submit the documents, and then say, you know, come across, have a chat via Zoom, via Teams, whatever, to clarify, you know, yes, this was pre-approved. I'm not making any major changes. I'm not changing anything to the reading list. I'm not making changes here. I'm just changing the assessment. Maybe I'm going from, you know, one final exam to a few. So that will alert us. We do not need to do the in-depth checks, but to provide an impact statement. We will just simply provide that statement saying it was previously approved and there's no cost to the library. Right? So, and just to wrap up by saying that the impact statement, just for your own information, it goes back to the faculty member responsible for the course. And I advise you keep it in a safe place, because let's face it, sometimes the proposal goes back and forth to ACWAC or maybe to settle, and you know, sometimes 6 months, 8 months later, we get an email asking, did you ever send me the impact statement? I can't find it. So share it with your office staff if necessary, the head of department, the dean of the faculty, and of course, ACWAC and the secretariat. So that's where we send our copy of the impact statement. When it comes to postgrad, of course, it's about the same, except of course it goes to the campus coordinator for graduate studies and research as opposed to the secretariat. So just a quick look at the impact statement. So this is what we provide. So we would then do, I just redacted off these things. So this is what we would just provide, an impact statement that says, okay, immediately upon approval and submission of the book list after approval, it'll cost the library $52,000 to acquire the books that we do not hold. And in the future, based on the material that is being requested, it could cost us about $81,000, right? So this is what we would provide, and we would say, simply say that is the resources required to support this. And this is what goes to QUAC and back to you. This is the final library impact statement. So if you want to keep these costs down, try to check our resources, use our resources, check to see what we have. Also check the open access resources if you want to bring these, because this is totally based on your book list, reading list, materials that you deem absolutely necessary for the course. Once more, of course, this is just an addendum that once you have gone through all board approvals, just to remember, send that completed book list for each course to the library. In the past, when we get the course proposal and we start working on it, we would automatically start purchasing the items that we didn't have. But now, budget constraints, we can only purchase those items when we get that book list, knowing full well that the course has been approved and you are ready to offer it within the next academic year, so that we get the items in time for our users. So just a reminder again, these are your liaison librarians in case you didn't know, quickly so that you can see who they are. Right, Mr. Osborne will take up duties on the 3rd of April, so which is just, I think, more or less 1 week away, right? A few days away. So some of you will know them, but just if you didn't, these are the persons. So thank you, and my contact information is here. The impact statement, as I said, the liaison librarians prepare all the documentation and they pass it to me, I review, and then I would submit the impact statement to the various parties. So thank you very much. If there are any questions.
All right, thank you so much for that, Ms. Pilgrim. I see we have a question from Sephra Rampasad.
Yes.
How much of a pre-existing course can be changed before it would be required to go through the entire approval process all over again? Is there a guideline?
Well, when it comes just to the library, as long as your resources are affected, that is where the library, with reference to other departments like Settle and so forth, Justin could speak to that.
Yes.
The library, yes, any sort of adjustment to your resources, that is critical for us. Or even if you amend your subject area, that means automatically, I would think your resources would change, because if you've added a new subject area, then there might be need for text to support that.
Right, and if from a curriculum stance, if it's something that, I think we did mention this last week, if it goes through substantive changes, meaning the learning outcomes have changed, the assessments have changed, etc., then it would have to go through the approval process from our end. I don't know if Dr. Pilgrim wants to chime in terms of what would necessitate the approval process all over again.
I think, Justin, you covered it pretty well.
Okay.
So I don't have anything else to add to that. Thank you.
Not a problem. I see Chris said, so there are usually 3 sections: required or essential, recommended, and other. So the impact statement is based on all sections or just what is in the essential or required? I think, Mariela, I think that's for you.
Yes, so that usually we hardly ever see people in their course proposal including those 3 sections. The book list, definitely, when you submit that official book list, it's there. But we generally check the essential or required essential text. Recommended. Other readings, no, we wouldn't factor that in because we won't rush off to buy that. We have a specific budget for book list items. So required or essential, those will be the priority. This will be like category A and perhaps recommended B, but not in the other. Right. So when you have, so the costing is based on really those first 2 sections.
Good, good. Any other questions?
Well, when you have things in the other section, it is always advisable, as I said, check to see our current holdings. You'll be surprised at the amount of material we have access to, as well as the open resources.
Right. Chris said, yep, will do.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. Thank you so much for this, for that insight and the information shared.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Pilgrim. I think, and I know Dr. Pilgrim also chimed in the chat and agreed with what you were saying, as well as Mr. Mohammed from CTL side. So thank you so much for that. Without further ado, before we go into the next presenter, I know that we are just about the time where we wanted to end, but I'm just going to ask just for a little bit more of your time, please, because we have the financial rep who's going to be doing her presentation now to shed some light on what the bursary is looking for when it comes to your proposals. Now, it's very nice that, or fitting that Mariela's segment ended with cost and that sort of thing, because right now we're going into the financial aspect of it. So without further ado, we just want to introduce Miss Mary Balber Singh. And just making sure, can you see my slideshow? Yes. So Miss Mary Balber Singh is the Senior Financial Manager at the bursary. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. Ms. Balber Singh, I don't know if we might need to make you co-host. So in case you have a PowerPoint or anything that you would need to share. So yeah, you can take it right away.
Thanks, Justin. Hello, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity to do a small presentation. Though I have to admit that, as I mentioned earlier to Justin, I believe that we're so busy that I actually forgot about the presentation, but it allowed me the time I'm able to do it because I was, given the presentation delayed, because I think I was supposed to start 1:30. I'm fine. So I don't know. I just want to share my screen. I just prepared a very brief presentation. So I am Mary Balber Singh, Senior Financial Manager in the Special Projects section. What do we do in special projects? So we are responsible for financial reporting and accounting for external grants. And that is the whole, within the strategic plan to assist the UWI in meeting its research, operational needs, and of course, helping in the financial aspect. And that ties in with our agility of the strategic plan. So our section really is a core area and aligned to the strategic plan with respect to restoring the financial health of the campus. And 2 important areas we deal with increasing the grants for academic and applied research to contribute to the bottom line, and then self-finance or full tuition, as they sometimes refer to it in the strategic plan. So essentially what I would look at, the main areas that, that we deal with respect to those two items would be the budget. So I will try to tie them in, but still separate them for ease of reference. So for example, if in a department you would like to offer a self-finance program, you would normally contact us, or at least, well, some persons don't even know what they are supposed to do. So if you want to offer a program, you will then, let's say, reach out to us, and we normally meet and discuss, okay, do you need to get new, what resources do you have? What do you need extra? And try to work out what we call a budget, right? Or costing. So I have a little, write up here as to what is a budget. A budget is a financial proposal that reflects the work that you plan to do, whether it is to offer a new program or whether you are going after grant funding from an external agency. It outlines the expected project costs in detail and should mirror the project description. What that means, if you are doing a project, external project, you would have different areas that project would follow. You would have a structure then. And the same structure that you would have your technical report, you should also structure costing along that same line then, so that we would make sure we capture all the costs. So the budget is presented as a list of anticipated project costs. So exactly all the projects that you will undertake, you would have to do, or project activities, you would have to do costing for it. And in the case of research grants, where we would normally use international sponsors, mainly like, let's say the EU, one of our largest donor, they would, and other sponsors, they would normally, the budget is a very important aspect, as they also use this in conjunction with the technical report to evaluate the reliability or the justification of the project costs. Basically, so whether you are doing a self-financed project or you are going after donor funding, a budget is made up of certain costs. Some are called direct costs, which I have a little description here. Direct costs are expenses that are clearly associated with and necessary to complete a project. For example, direct costs for items such as stipends or subsistence allowance, travel allowance, and registration fees paid to or on behalf of participants in connection with meetings, conferences, and so on. So for example, if you are doing a research project and these relate, you have these kinds of costs, these would be considered direct costs because it relates directly to the project. Or if you are doing, if you are running a self-finance program, you would also have direct costs. So for example, if you have to hire a lecturer or a part-time teaching staff, those would be those persons who are hired specifically to teach the particular course. Because that costing will fall under your direct cost, because it would be somebody who you would hire under contract for service, and you can clearly identify what the cost is for, right? So direct cost just means those costs that you're able to identify. If you have to purchase equipment, etc. You also have So direct costs, we also have indirect costs. Now, what is indirect costs? Indirect costs, or what we call at the UWI or other institutions, common services fee or cost. Indirect costs are associated with the general operation of the UWI and cannot be readily assigned to individual projects. These costs include facilities and maintenance, general and departmental administration, etc. Right? Now, okay, so what we basically do is, so when we are doing the budget, we have the direct costs and we have an element or a fee called a common service fee. Usually it's a percentage that range between 7% and up to a maximum. Well, I have 15 here because that is what we use most of the time. But in our financial procedures manual, they have up to 20%. So we put a cost for grant funding, externally funded projects only. And that would be, for example, that cost is usually made up of a shared cost, central costs that are not only that cannot be specifically identified with the project. So for example, when you send your budget for us to review, let's say the accounting section would look at that, we would process your payment. If you hire staff and we have to run payroll, pay them on the payroll, all the payroll costs, the licensing fee that we pay for the PeopleSoft, the banner system and the license, and so on. So that is what we call indirect costs and common service fee. So we will normally put a percentage of the expected income and this cost goes to the university, right? The bursary and administration. And I'll just show you a little example here of what a total budget would look like. And as I said, direct costs would be things like your purchasing equipment, personnel, human resources, traveling, subsistence, stipend, and so on. And the indirect costs, which would have the common service fees. These are specifically for going after grant funding. Now, when you are going after grant funding, normally the donor would, in some instances, may ask for a percentage of the cost to be absorbed or shared by the university, the UWI. And so usually it would be in terms of in-kind. So it would be the services of, let's say, the personal investigator and other UWI staff members. And so we put a value in there to match exactly what the donors require, whether it's 15%, 10%, or whatever that they ask. So normally our total cost would be made up of direct costs, indirect costs, and cost sharing for special projects, externally funded projects. If we are doing a budget to run a self-finance program, again, the format will remain similar. We have direct costs. We would have indirect costs here. We don't normally put indirect costs for self-finance programs because we don't charge common service fee, and cost sharing doesn't apply. So essentially, when we are costing the programs for self-finance, it is the direct costs, the cost that we incur from running this new program. All right. So I just want to switch a little bit to show you, let me see if I can. I just want to show you what a typical program would look like for costing per program, right? This is a mini example. I try to take off the information related to that had information about the department. So let's say, are you seeing, or I have to stop sharing and share again?
We're seeing,
Oh, you're seeing the budget?
oh, no, not the budget, the
Okay,
PowerPoint.
so right, so let me
You
share.
have to share again, yeah.
Yeah, so are you seeing now the budget? Yes. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, great. Right, so some of the challenges that we would normally encounter rather, is that when someone wants to run a program, they don't know how to start doing the budget. What type of information is required, and what we look for. So in this case, let's say you want to run, whether it's a certificate program, a diploma, or a master's program, it doesn't matter. The format is essentially the same. Normally, we try to do a projection for at least 3 to 5 years kind of thing, although I only have 2 here, but usually we do about 3 to 5 years. And what we would do, we would estimate how many students we expected to enroll in this program. And so we would, once we arrive at the fee, I'll tell you how we'd arrive at the fee just now. We would normally say, okay, that would be our income. We expect to charge for 18,000 for this course. We expect to have 20 students enroll, and this would be our projected income, right? This is the accumulated amount, so total income. Now we would have expenditures I explained just now. In this case here, all these would be direct costs, because this is advertising and promotion to run this particular program. In this case, we estimated at 8,000 per year. We have staff that we hire in to teach this program full-time, lecturers. We have information about the taught courses, that is not relevant. Part-time lecturers, e-tutors. So if you notice, we put cost in here for full-time lecturers, part-time lecturers, and e-tutors, and also research supervisors, yes, 1. So we have direct costs here. This is the staff costs. Then we also have materials and supplies that the department projected that they would need. And a costing is included here for each year. And also some software, right? All these expenditures are specifically for this program. And of course, whenever we are doing a budget, because it's an estimate, we will normally put a contingency amount. So if we fall short or something we didn't think about or we forgot, we can use this contingency amount for that. This is our total expenditure here. So we projected to run this MSc program, it would cost us $336,000 for the year 1, $323,000 for year 2, a total of this amount. But we are looking at it annually, and seeing that we had income of $360,000 for year 1, an expenditure of $336,000, we had a small surplus. They call it gross profit, but it is essentially a small surplus of $23,000 in year 1, the first year, and $36,000 in the second year. Now, if your expenditure had exceeded your income and you send this up to the bursary will return this to you, because one of the requirements is that if you are running a program, you are expected to cover your cost. And if you are making losses, then it would not be beneficial to the university. So now what could cause your, so you would have to show a positive figure here. So normally what you would do, let's assume you send something looking like this, where you are showing that you expected to generate surplus funds, which would be positive for the university. And you write to the bursary, you write to us and ask that you suggested a tuition fee of 18,000, right? So when you send that information to us, I will normally review and check back everything, make sure as reasonable. Well, I would normally meet with you online to make sure that what is here, is accurate. So for example, let's say you put full-time lecturers here. I may ask you, are you hiring additional staff? Or is it, or are these lecturers currently being paid in the faculty? So for example, if the lecturers are already full-time lecturers and they are being paid and there are no further payment, then because they have free spare capacity, then there would be no need to cost here. So then I would say, okay, well, then you need to remove this because we are not paying them additional. If, for example, you are paying them additional amounts, then this would be fine. And so on. So this is what I will do. I will normally go through this and ensure that it is accurate. Also, if you have to rent a venue and you didn't have a rental value here, so we look to make sure that is accurate. The other thing is, right, so the tuition fee, this tuition fee is one of the key things that we will be looking at. So for example, when you send this fee to us, we would normally do a competitive analysis. In other words, we would look to see that this MSc that we are offering, let's say it's an MSc in digitization. We would look to see what our local competitors in Trinidad are offering. What is the duration of their program? What fees are they charging? We'd also look regionally to our sister campuses to see what they are offering and how our fees, how the fee is in comparison to what they are offering. Because the objective here is that we don't want to price ourselves outside of the market. We want to cover our costs, but at the same time, produce a surplus. It must be worth our while. There's also a minimum number of students that you are required to have in order to run a course. So I think it's 15. In this case, they had 20, right? Otherwise, I don't think it would be approved. The other thing is, so we'll do something like this, this is what we call a competitive analysis. Most of the departments and faculty submitting the information, they would, submit this information. So we'd review this. If all this is okay here, we are satisfied with the budget, I will then move this proposal on to one of my colleagues who will deal with the activity-based costing. Now, essentially, the activity-based costing doesn't affect the budget here. And once it is generating the surplus, it will be approved. Now, the university implemented its activity-based costing, where each faculty, education, science, law, engineering, medicine, etc., at the end of the year, they look at the total number of courses that are being offered by that particular faculty. And we look at the total costs for academic staff, ATS staff, support staff, central services, and it's 5 categories, right? And essentially we divide that, we get an average cost per student. So when this goes to my colleague, he would check to see that, that we are at least covering one of the tiers. Let's say the academic costs, if we have to pay, academic staff for this additional teaching and so on. But usually it is approved once it meets once the budget is okay. And we would normally write to the faculty, the dean, the head of department, dean, saying that the budget was approved, and you can now take the budget to the, the FNGPC for approval. Of course, you would have gone through your the academic part of it to get those things approved. Or some persons, they do all these things and then they take the paper to the academic board to say, okay, we have bursary approval and so on. So essentially, that is what we look for. We just make sure that you're covering your costs. The cost is also comparable, competitive, locally, regionally, and if not locally, regionally, internationally. In most cases, our fees are the lowest, and essentially that is what we do with respect to the cost, the programs that you are sending. Sometimes though, like I saw one today where a department, a faculty rather, they offer an MSc program, and some students, they don't complete the MSc program. So they basically want to offer them a diploma. So I saw this email circulating and it kept coming to me, but there was no need to come to me because basically there was no cost implication. The students would have paid to do the MSc program, which is a much higher fee. And now they want to issue, they want to give the students something. So they don't have a diploma program, and they want to issue the student with a diploma equivalent. So they want to take that to the academic board or FNGPC. But because there was no fee implication, the paper did not need to come to me. So, you know, sometimes the papers could come and it's just wasting time, you know, because there's no fee implication. Also, sometimes person send a paper, excuse, we are in March now, and they want to offer this program, a new self-finance program in September. According to the university rules, all new programs must receive campus, excuse, and university approval by FNGPC by February of the year in which the course would be offered. So in other words, if you send a paper like that in March, like at this time, it is too late. So we just need to bear that in mind. And essentially that is it in a nutshell. Let me see, that is with respect to the budgeting. I don't know if anyone has any question before I move back to the other part, but this is all about the budgeting. The self-finance programs, an example of self-finance program.
I mean, I am one of the presenters, but I'm still, this section that said library services and acquisitions, books and resources.
Yes.
So how do we get this money to buy
Sorry?
the resources? How do we get this money here that they have budgeted or whatever it is to buy the resources for self-financing courses?
Okay, so basically they would prepare their budget, get it approved, they would enroll students, students would pay fees, and that's how they get money, by students enrolling in the program. And when students register, you pay the normal registration fees as well as the tuition fee, and that's how you generate money to cover the cost.
Yes, I do recognize that, but when I say we, I mean, how does this money that has been allocated to acquire resources come to the library for acquiring resources? It's dependent on the faculty to do this transfer.
Oh, well, in the case of the library, well, do we have a fee for library here in this particular example?
Yes, down below.
Okay, yes. So the department, the project coordinator, in this case would do that, yes. We don't get involved in the action and the operation. We just review the financials, approve it, and the department does the rest.
Okay, thank you very much. Because for a few in the past, a few self-financing courses we got, but since there's so many coming now, we need to follow up. So thank you. I will then follow up with the departments or the faculties. Thank you very much.
Well, each project, each self-finance program is different, you know, so
Yes.
it depends on what costing they have in their budget.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome. Any more questions with respect to the budget? If not, these are, I have some. Hello?
I see we have some, sorry, I see we have some questions in the chat. Someone is asking, are there differences in the cost for online and face-to-face programs or courses? The answer I know is yes for that. I don't know, Mary or Laura, would you want to speak to this? Or yes, okay, so Laura's put it into the chat, yes. I guess we could probably elaborate on what might cause the the differences in the costs, but we could handle that in the chat. Sherry Ann said, are all GR programs, I guess, graduate now self-financing or some still financed by GATE?
Okay, so let me answer some of these questions. So I'll answer the last one first. So basically, a self-finance program, it has nothing to do with GATE. The self-finance, so the university is funded by two methods, from our normal recurring subvention from government, which we refer to as CGC funds. And so all our normal BScs, PhDs, and MPhils, those are CGC programs where we get funding from the government to pay teachers, lecturers, and buy resources, etc., to run these programs. So these are CGC, the self-finance programs. These are, oh, by the way, those CGC programs, the university cannot increase fees as we feel like. You know, we have to get the approval of the government because they pay the fees, they give us the subvention, the 80-20, etc., accordingly, to cover those costs. With respect to the self-finance program, on the other hand, we do not need government's approval for this because this is not being funded by the government. These are courses that we put on and we ask students to pay the full fee. In this case, though, in a lot of cases, these programs are put on by the department and faculties because let's say they may have some spare capacity, and so we don't need to hire extra lecturers and so on. Very little resources we would need to pay for additionally. In terms of the funding for GATE, whether it is a CGC program, meaning an MPhil, BSc, PhD, or whether it is a self-finance programs, most of the self-finance programs are MScs and diplomas. The GATE funding, it doesn't really matter. Well, now with the GATE funding, it's more like you have to meet certain criteria. But in terms of whether it is a CGC or a self-finance, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I hope that answers.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mary. We definitely appreciate it. I see in the chat they said thank you. Thank you so much for that. All the colleagues, you know, Dr. Pilgrim, Miss Pilgrim, and Ms. Balber Singh. I see we have two hands raised. Very quickly, I think we could go with Lynette and then we can go with Andrea and then we can wrap everything up. All right. So Lynette, do you want to go?
Yes, thank you. Sure. I had a question about costing for part-time staff.
because in the example here, there's a cost for e-tutors. However, in the past, there was always an issue when it came to the asynchronous costing of part-time staff. Because when the time came for them to submit their claim, unless they could identify that they were teaching in a specific place at a specific time, because the form asks for a specific hour in a specific place, there was a lot of difficulty in them getting paid. But when you're running a blended course, even the asynchronous period does require tutor input. All right, tutors are still doing online work. So I was wondering if, because this was a few years ago, so I was wondering if some sort of structure is now in place to be able to properly cost and pay tutors who are working in the blended environment for that asynchronous time when you cannot put specific time, classroom number, et cetera, on a claim form for them to make a claim.
Okay, so with respect to that, that sounds like technical from the department's perspective and not really for us, because once you could identify a cost that we have to pay for, it is supposed to be included in the budget and we will normally pay accordingly. So with respect to like location, and we don't get involved in those things. Whatever is put here, it is supposed to be properly costed. All the costs that we are supposed to be incurring to run this program, the extra costs, part-time staff or whatever, we normally issue contracts for service if it's a part-time person. And once the work has been completed, the assignment, normally the heads, you know, you pass through your stuff through the head of department, etc., the normal channels of approval and send it to us, and it is processed.
If I may just clarify, the issue is not on this end, the budgeting end, but the issue is on the other end when it is actually done and it reaches the bursary, because we often get it sent back to the department.
Okay,
because of that issue of not being able to identify specific hours on specific days.
Oh, okay. Which area in the budget are you, I mean, which area in the bursary are you referring to? Because in our case, once the head of department certified that the work has been complete, we have no need, we don't need to know where, what, why, how this was done. Online, offline, that's not our responsibility or even our business. we don't, so I'm not sure where in the bursary that would have been asked, because I mean, you know, whether it is, you're sure it's for something for CGC, I mean, special projects, or whether it is something like running a workshop or something, I don't know. But those questions wouldn't come to us. Because part-time staff members, they are paid through the payroll. So normally once they sign their contract and we provide funding, we don't see anything else. If it is a contract for service too, where then we may see it, but once these sheets are submitted or whatever, we will not just pay.
All right, thank you so much for that. Lynette and Mary. I know we have some more questions, but what I'm doing for the sake of time, all right, we can probably, let me just wrap up the session. We can probably ask some of those questions after. So those of us who need to get to classes and so on, I don't want to keep anyone back. Is that okay? Yeah. So thank you again, Mary, for that very insightful and very necessary and important presentation on the financial aspect of course and program proposals. Just some general information about the approval process. Now, you're most welcome, Lynette. This is just some of the information that we'll have here that you would need to complete. So you notice we mentioned the bursary, we mentioned CTM, we mentioned library. These are all co-presenters. And at some point in time, once they have, these different entities have reviewed the process, they all have to be ticked accordingly. All right, you even see the OL somewhere inside there as well, correct? Can you see my PowerPoint?
No, you're not.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. So we have
Yes,
some
we're seeing it.
nice, good.
No.
So some general information. And one of the things that I was referring to is the general information, general check boxes as we see here. With regard to the campus bursary, the CETL, the library, all of whom you've heard from today, as well as the OL. Thank you to our presenters as well, in helping us to understand this process and equipping us with the information and the skills to navigate through this experience. And I'm seeing in the chat, persons are saying it is already helpful. You can have more of this. Definitely. But Chris, you could post that in the evaluation link. I think Mr. Garcia.
Folks, sorry, excuse, I have an emergency. I have to leave right away.
Sure, no problem. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you can definitely post it in the chat, Chris. Not in the chat, sorry, the evaluation form. Mr. Garcia posted the link there. And you can post it there and we can have more of this, more of these kinds of sessions. Now, now we do have, just a recap, we looked at the steps in the course review, program review process. We looked at some of the salient components of this process. And then we also looked at the template and we were designing things along the way. So you inserted your prerequisites, your topics, etc., your content, your learning outcomes, and even mapped out some of the assessments for each level for the learning outcomes. And of course, that speaks to alignment. We also explored some of the other aspects of the process, including the financial, the library areas or reviews, and the OL and so on in bursary. So this brings us to the end of our session for today. Again, please feel free, or please, instead of just feeling free, please complete the evaluation form, which Mr. Garcia has provided in the chat. And I think we could probably just copy and paste the link again. And you will definitely see this session on our YouTube channel. We also want to take this time to let you know about our Faculty Professional Development Week, which is scheduled for next week. Now, that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to look at assessments in higher education. We do have a panel discussion starting from next week, Monday. We have in addition to Monday morning mentors, #MMM. We also have yes, thank you so much for that, Dr. Pilgrim, and our presenters, our other presenters. Thank you. And we look forward to future collaborations. All right. So yes, so we do have our Faculty Professional Development Week next week. We have a panel discussion, I think, on Monday, in addition to Monday morning mentors. We do have a webinar on assessments for student success. And we do have 2 student-based or student-focused webinars on Wednesday and Thursday of next week as well. All part of the Faculty Professional Development Week, because assessment in this current landscape of teaching and learning is a bit of a bumpy ride for both faculty and students, I would say. What we're trying to do is take it from both angles. So we have faculty-specific sessions and we have student-specific or student-targeted sessions. All right. This brings us to the end of our session. Just move on. Good. So we have if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. If not, you can contact our co-facilitators. And I think that should be it. Yeah. By all means, thank you. Thank you to our producer, Mr. Mark Garcia, and the support from Mr. Duku as well. And we look forward to more sessions. Again, next week, we look forward to seeing you. And we also have our faculty cafe, which is the following week, all right? So you can look forward to that. And the Faculty Cafe is a face-to-face event, whereas the Faculty Professional Development Week, they're all virtual events. All right, so you can look out in your email for those information on those sessions. All right, have a great afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you to our co-presenters, and have a great afternoon.
Same to you. Bye.